Hi, it's Dwyer, GamblersAdvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let's talk about tomorrow's fight. Manny Pacquiao versus Juan Manuel Marquez. Okay, as I've said in an earlier video, I expect Marquez to win the fight. Right? Is there a way Manny Pacquiao can win the fight? Absolutely. And I've discussed how he could, in my opinion, in an earlier video. I've also given specific betting advice with specific bets that are being offered by casinos on my DwyerVIP.com site. So let's talk about styles in this video, right? And things you should look out for during the fight. This is kind of like a YouTube viewing guide for the fight. Opening bell. Right? Let me just say this. Manny Pacquiao is certainly a Hall of Famer. He's certainly one of the best of his generation. But let's be clear. His game is simple. It's like Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer, baseball Mariano Rivera's game. The relief pitcher is simple. Rivera really throws two pitches, a straight fastball and a cutter, right? Because the pitches look alike and because they end up in different locations, right? And because Mariano Rivera is highly skilled in throwing those two pitches, hitters can't figure it out when they see Rivera for 1 or 2 innings. Right? Those who can, look up the records. Nomar Garciaparra, Rafael Palmeiro, are able to feast on Mariano Rivera, but most can't. Right? His Hall of Fame game is simple. Well, Manny Pacquiao's Hall of Fame game is also simple. He's not a complicated fighter. This is a contrast in styles. Juan Manuel Marquez is very complicated. If you can think of it, he can do it. Fight on his back foot. Fight on his front foot. Fight inside. You want to see him throw uppercuts with both hands to win a fight? Look at his first fight against Juan Diaz. Right? He's the kind of guy who shows skills in fights that you haven't seen him show before. And he's adept in doing so. Also, if you're looking at Juan Manuel Marquez, understand that if you see him early in a fight, first, second round, he might be somebody else later in a fight. You're talking about a guy who literally changes what he's doing as the fight goes along. Right? It's just like Tony Gwynn, if you're into baseball, as a baseball hitter. Right? He's feeling the pitcher out. He might go to the opposite field in the early innings against the pitcher. Once he figures out the pitch pattern, then he might pull the ball later. Right? You know, George Brett, other great hitters who adapt. That's Juan Manuel Marquez. But let's be clear on Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is that fastball throwing relief pitcher. He'll overpower you if you can't catch up to the fastball. Right? His fastball is going to look incredible when you first see it for that first inning. He's going to be mowing down guys early. But if you get by the fastball, if you get by the pitch that frames it, the cutter, or whatever else the pitch is, you're going to find out that Manny Pacquiao is not Greg Maddux. Right? You're going to find out that Manny Pacquiao is not Juan Manuel Marquez in terms of having a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, a plan E. He's not. Right? He's actually a guy who, quite frankly, is that fastball relief pitcher, not starting pitcher, but relief pitcher, who, to win fights, really has to blow you out early. In other words, he has to unload such power and such force that you're as overwhelmed as Eric Morales was in their third fight, right? You're as overwhelmed as Juan Manuel Marquez was the first round he saw Manny Pacquiao. Let me just say, there's a reason why Mariano Rivera, who was initially a starting pitcher, moved to the bullpen, right? A lot of these relief pitchers in baseball were originally starting pitchers, but their teams figured out that by the third or fourth inning, the gimmick was up. Batters adjusted. So, here's what I'll be looking at during the fight. These are some of the keys, I feel, to the fight. First 2 rounds. Manny Pacquiao straight left hand. Is it landing? That's a $1 million question. If it's landing with regularity, this fight is over. Juan Manuel Marquez simply will no longer have the reflexes to even go 12 rounds against Manny Pacquiao, right? It's just a matter of time. If you see Manny Pacquiao straight left hand landing, especially from distance. In other words, if Manny Pacquiao is able to stay outside like he did against De La Hoya, get the range, and throw that straight left, right? And if it's landing on Marquez's chin, few men in the sport can stand up to that, right? So the first question is Manny Pacquiao straight left landing, right? The next question I want you to ask yourself is Manny Pacquiao staying outside, or is he coming inside to fight Juan Manuel Marquez? Right? As I've said in an earlier video, if Manny Pacquiao comes inside and decides to have the prolonged exchanges he's had in the first 3 fights, he'll be giving away his foot speed. Right? I just don't quite get why Pacquiao can't shoot a jab, stay outside, let his foot speed rule the day while he has it early in the fight. Right? Force the other guy to not just box him, but to find him. Right? If Manny Pacquiao isn't using his legs to dance around the ring, then he's falling into the same trap that he fell into in the first 3 fights. So you need to figure out, right, who's the aggressor in this fight. If you see Manny Pacquiao again coming inside and then actually duking it out with Marquez, if there were a lot of punches landed by the 2 men, in my opinion, that bodes poorly for Manny Pacquiao. Marquez is just the better defensive fighter. Marquez, simply put, is the better technician. Marquez is the two-handed fighter. When you see the 2 guys together, Manny Pacquiao doesn't know what Marquez is going to throw next. Marquez has the full toolbox of punches, whereas Marquez knows Manny Pacquiao's right hand underdeveloped. I know he landed a big one against Ricky Hatton. Good for him. Maybe he gets off a big one every 10 years. But that right hand, underdeveloped, right? It's the left that's the big problem. If they're having exchanges, and if you don't see Marquez getting hit by Pacquiao's left, Marquez is going to have the advantage in those exchanges. Understand, Marquez has had the advantage in those exchanges for each of the 3 fights. The 3 fights come down to Manny Pacquiao landing big left hands at times, dropping Marquez. Marquez getting up dazed and confused, surviving for a round or two, and then slowly taking over the fight. That's been the pattern. The last fight was a little bit different. Marquez weathers the early rounds against Manny Pacquiao and then of course takes over the fight, doesn't even hit the canvas. I don't know what fight the judges judged, right? I don't know what they were scoring. I thought Marquez clearly won the third fight. Well, here, understand, for Manny Pacquiao to be on top in this fight, he needs to land that left hand. He needs to soften up Marquez, right? And let me let you in on a Manny Pacquiao secret. If he's not landing the left hand from distance, if he's not outside, then leaping in and dropping a bomb, like he did on Shane Mosley. Let's remember, Pacquiao put Shane Mosley on the canvas. If Pacquiao's actually throwing that left from up close, then that left doesn't have that one-punch knockout power. Manny Pacquiao is only a one-punch knockout power guy, other than that Ricky Hatton fight. And I'll agree that's an outlier fight. But he's only a one-punch knockout guy when he's throwing the left from distance. When he's outside and he then comes in with a long left hand. Take a look at the first fight. Take a look at the punches that dropped Marquez. Marquez arguably never recovers from the first knockdown. Understand, they're in the middle of the ring. And of course, Manny Pacquiao, with space between them, is able to get off a left hand from distance. It hits Marquez. Marquez goes down. That's Pacquiao's 5-star punch. Right? When Manny Pacquiao's up close and can't extend the left, when he's throwing left hooks instead of long left, straight left hands, right? Then he's more of a combination puncher who's just trying to outspeed and overwhelm you with volume. Inside, he becomes a volume puncher. This is a far cry from, let's say, hookers who can knock you out with hooks up close, right? And so, the other question, other than is Manny Pacquiao landing that straight left, is what kind of fight is this, right? If Manny Pacquiao's in close, then he's trying to overwhelm Marquez. I would make the argument he can't knock Marquez out when he's up close in an exchange, right? Manny Pacquiao, if he's going to win this fight by knockout, needs to be outside, not inside, and he needs to hide his hands. In other words, as I said before, lower volume, not higher volume. He needs to literally time it so that he's able to land a huge straight left from distance. Let me make another point too. If Marquez makes it to the end of the 4th round completely lucid, if his bell has not been rung by the end of the 4th round, right? If he doesn't look like he's on the verge of being knocked out, if he hasn't hit the canvas by the end of the 4th round and doesn't look like he's barely survived a round, in other words, if he doesn't look like Lucien Boutte looked at the end of, the next to last round against Carl Froch, then Manny Pacquiao's in a lot of trouble. Because the time of the fight is crucial to Manny Pacquiao. Understand, power and speed rule the day early. You get by the power and speed early, and you take it to the middle rounds, and that power starts to dissipate, right? Manny Pacquiao knocked down Shane Mosley early. That fight ended up going the distance, right? People here online know I've made pretty good money betting on overs in Manny Pacquiao's recent fights, right? First, let me say this. I picked Pacquiao over Ricky Hatton because I knew Ricky Hatton had a hitch in his punch, and Hatton is a guy who gets hit on the way in. We saw that in Hatton's last fight. Throw that fight out. Think about the Pacquiao fights that have gone over. Joshua Clottey went over. Miguel Cotto went over. Antonio Margarito went over. Shane Mosley went over. If you're able to survive the early power, right? Pacquiao dropped Marquez early, dropped Shane Mosley early. If you're able to get out of the early rounds, then you need to ask yourself, does Manny Pacquiao have the power at welter to knock you out after the 4th round? Right? Let me also point out too, I know he got David Diaz by KO later in that fight. He was too fast for David Diaz. He hurt David Diaz in the first 4 rounds of that fight. The speed and power were obvious. Understand, this is a tale of 2 fights. The first 4 rounds, in which Manny Pacquiao should have a huge hand speed and foot speed advantage, and the last 8 rounds. That's when technicians take over, right? Same dynamic in the Bernard Hopkins, Jean Pascal series of fights, right? The athlete looks great early. You remember Hopkins at one point got knocked down twice in that first fight. The athlete looks great early. But then once we get to the later part of the round and punches start to get timed, the technician figures out the speed. The technician figures out the angles. Then suddenly, technique takes over. So if you're a Pacquiao fan, you need to see your guy do something dramatic the first 4 rounds of this fight. He has to hurt Marquez, right? He has to injure Marquez, right? If Marquez isn't, looking like Lucien Boutte looked shortly before the fight, if he's not dazed and confused, if he doesn't have an injury, like let's say an eye injury, where one of his eyes are closed, which would be almost fatal against Manny Pacquiao's hand speed, if he's still looking clearly out of both of his eyes and he's not marked up, he doesn't have a cut that's threatening the fight, he doesn't have a Vitaly Klitschko gash against Lennox Lewis, right? If he looks good, if he's uncut at the end of the 4th round, and if he has been able to weather Pacquiao's storm and he's defending against Pacquiao's left from distance, and if he's not down 0-4, if he's down, let's say, no more than 3-1, or if the fight's actually tied early, which is what Timothy Bradley, I thought, at the end of the 4th round was able to pull off. If the fight's tied early, then Manny Pacquiao's in serious trouble. Okay, he's in serious trouble. Conversely, and keep in mind, this is a sport where guys get old overnight. If Manny Pacquiao is able to stutter his left hand, you know what I mean. It's like Marquez has it timed. So if Pacquiao, and I'll do it with my right because I'm right-handed, if Pacquiao is able to just fake a left, have Marquez moving his hands and then throw the real left hand, if Pacquiao is able to come up with tricks to land that straight left from distance to confuse Marquez, or if Pacquiao comes out with a new style where he's actually on his back foot shooting a jab and saying, hey, like Ray Leonard in the rematch against Roberto Duran, if Pacquiao says, hey, you know what? You don't have my legs. You don't have my foot speed. This is going to be an issue. I'm going to be outside shooting a jab until you show me that you can close the distance between us, that you can offset my foot speed advantage, that you can deal with my jab and deal with my feet. Unless Pacquiao does that and banks rounds and uses a physical advantage that he has that he hasn't used for 3 fights. Unless Pacquiao pulls a Ray Leonard in the Duran rematch, right? Uses his feet. Then, in my opinion, if we get to the end of the 4th round, and Marquez is completely lucid and Pacquiao can't land his left, Pacquiao's going to be in a lot of trouble. Pacquiao needs to do something dramatic early. Land some straight lefts or show us a new style that Marquez is not prepared for. Right? If he doesn't, if this is the same old Pacquiao, and if he's just trying to overwhelm Marquez inside, you're looking at a fight that's going to go a few rounds. Let me also say this too, and I don't say this lightly. Don't discount the possibility of Marquez being the one on his front foot in the later rounds of this fight. Right? Manny Pacquiao looks like a fighter who can be broken. Right? If you're able, and it's hard to do, but if you're able to get by that straight left, if you figure out his left hand, right, then you can have the kind of success that the hitters who figured out Mariano Rivera's cutter had, right? Because as great as Pacquiao is, his formula isn't that complicated. Anyone can look at film and realize that Manny Pacquiao is left-hand dominant. Let me go further. Eric Morales beat him primarily behind a jab. Timothy Bradley, I know the fight's controversial, but what I want you to do is you look at the tape, is to realize that Timothy Bradley maintains distance behind a jab. And understand, that's a fight where Bradley couldn't even use his legs because he had hurt his ankles, right? Timothy Bradley maintains distance behind a jab. Juan Manuel Marquez now has the benefit of the Timothy Bradley tape. If Juan Manuel Marquez is able to bust up Manny Pacquiao's face, could easily happen, right? Marquez has a jab. If Marquez is able to bust up Manny Pacquiao's face and neutralize that left hand, don't be surprised if he tries to end 4 fights of frustration by closing the show. Don't think that Manny Pacquiao has the only chance at a knockout in this fight. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. And for betting advice with actual odds being offered, visit us at DwyerVIP.com. Thanks for watching. Good luck. Enjoy the fight. Win, lose, or draw. All I ask is that you stop by later with your post-fight comments. Thanks for watching.